Welcome back to Off the Shelf. Today we continue our discussion from last week, which was finding inspiration, how to maximize the chances, the potential of inspiration striking you, and how to maintain that inspiration. If you want to go and see part 1 of this discussion, I'll put a link on the screen right now. So if you haven't seen part 1, I do recommend going to watch that first. That was parts 1 to 4. So today we're going to finish off with part 5 through to 10. So let's get straight into it. Number 5. Ignore the audience. Find your theatre. So parts 1 to 4 were all well and good so far, but the fact is, most people don't struggle with that initial spark of inspiration. They have an idea for their novel or screenplay or what have you, a vague idea of the shape of the story, and the initial inspiration is enough to see them at least get a few pages of their first draft down. But inspiration, it's like the opposite of stamina. It quickly fizzles out, or it just abandons you. What then? It gets even harder to find fresh spark to continue because it needs to be specific to the story you've already started. It's like you're driving a car that is about to run dry on petrol, but you can't just stop at any petrol station because this car runs on a very specific kind of rainbow juice. Now, there's a multitude of reasons for this sudden burnout, but a big one is when the writer is agonizing over their audience. I don't know who this is for, they say. Without a targeted audience, this feels pointless. Now, most people who would give you advice will say, just forget about the audience, write for yourself. Or they'll say, forget about writing for someone, just write, put down anything. But let's be honest here, that doesn't help much because the writer doesn't know what he or she wants from this either. When a first-time swimmer is flailing in the pool, nobody shouts out, just swim, don't worry about the water. Now, what people really mean when they agonize over the audience is, they mean, don't worry about being judged. Applying a what about the audience mindset when you've barely started is like exposing a building site to torrential rain. Of course it isn't going to be waterproof yet. No, what you're seeking is some kind of influence on your work that will help you to give it shape and direction without being judgmental. So, what I say to you is forget about the audience and consider your theatre. What do I mean? Well, when you write, how do you imagine your story playing out in your head? Do you imagine it happening around you and you're invisible and omnipresent like a camera? Or is it happening on a big cinema screen? Or how about on stage like a pantomime? It really does help to consider the format of how your story plays out in your mind and stick to it. Because not only does that help to keep an even tone to your writing, it also helps in giving the story focus and drive, because you've narrowed down what you see in your mind's eye. You have definition, and with definition, it is easier to see the way forward. And the audience? Well, personally, I love to imagine a packed out cinema watching my story play out as if it were on a huge IMAX screen. But not once do I consider them to be judging the story. They're totally on my side, whooping, laughing, and crying in all the right places. Now, is that unrealistic? Oh, heck yeah, but boy, oh boy, does it help me. With a rapt audience behind me, I have the motivation to put on a show. So don't look over your shoulder when you're writing. They're going to be loving it. Look in front of you and get the theatre right. Number 6. Creativity is a physical exercise. Did you know that we are more creative when we're tired? Well, sort of. That's a confusion of cause and effect. It's not exhaustion itself that makes us more creative, but because we've been active beforehand. That's what makes you more creative. Because, yes, creativity comes from the cranium, but so many people mistakenly conflate mental activities with being still, immobile, and inviting lethargy and laziness. That is actually poison to creativity. Look at it this way. The finest athletes in the world also maintain a mental strength. They can't just be the fastest, strongest people in the world. They must know it in their minds. Mental stimuli is essential in making the body realize its full potential. The reverse is also true. Now, I'm by no means saying that you need to have the body of a football player for your writing to work. I mean, have you seen George R.R. Martin? No offense. But days where you don't leave the house and sit around all day are days when your writing will come sluggishly and with much effort than is necessary. To this day, I find it harder to get 1,000 words on paper on the weekends than after an 8-hour workday. Oh, but PJ, you might say, I don't struggle. I roll out a couple of thousand words every morning before I even have breakfast. Well, I applaud you for your industriousness, genuinely. But I reckon you could have done even more if you'd gone for, a quick walk outside beforehand. So, despite the fact that the image of the author is one of, stereotypically, a recluse stuffed away in a study all day and night, the simple truth is that to get out there and to get the muscles moving is to freshen up those synapses firing in your brain and invite further productivity and, yes, inspiration. Number 7. Creativity is, by definition, imperfection. Can you think of any film director who captures exactly what they want, special effects and all, with their first take? Or the band who nails studio quality recording in their first jam session? Or an architect who sets out their vision on their first draft of a blueprint? Of course not. And yet, so many novice writers expect perfection of themselves whenever they put pen and paper together. They scrutinize every word, every line, and before the ink is barely dry, it is gone, erased, edited out, not good enough. Why the anomaly? Well, I think it's two things. First, most other creative endeavors are a team effort, meaning you have other people to bounce off of should you get stuck. Writers largely work solo and for long stretches of time, so when they hit a wall, it can seem much harder to overcome it. The second reason comes back to our old friend inspiration. An inspired idea is a miraculous thing, lightning in a bottle, but turning that lightning in a bottle into words can sometimes prove impossible. Time and again, that novice writer will lay down a few paragraphs, read it back, decide it doesn't do her ideas justice, then throw it away and start again. Rinse and repeat. They rarely get beyond the first chapter before they give up altogether, and that's sad. But let's be clear here. Nobody in history has ever perfectly converted inspiration into the perfect movie, album, or film, or book. Anything you've ever heard described as inspired actually has about 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration put into it. Despite popular opinion, the creative process isn't a refined indulgence. No, creativity is messy. Before that excellent film landed before your eyes, it was reshot 70 times before a green screen by sleep-deprived directors and actors putting a brave face on pulled muscles. That album you're listening to now was hundreds of hours of jam sessions, mixing, the guitarist being rushed to hospital because of a broken wrist. And writing is no exception. Your writing will be messy. Your first draft will be full of inconsistencies, plot holes, and passages that, when read back a month later, make absolutely no sense. This is good. You may have this big, shapeless lump of clay, but at least you have clay to shape now. Yes, you should strive to put down quality material when you do write. Yes, your inspiration is what brought you here in the first place. But you can't be a slave to it. Lightning in a bottle is a wonder, but transcribing it to page takes more sweat than ink. Number 8. Momentum is key. And now this is an easy one, this one, although it's often overlooked. So we've now established that inspiration can see you out of the gates, but hard work and a workmanship-like approach to writing is what sees you through the bulk of the journey to the last page. So a project the size of a book or a movie or any creative endeavour really demands a huge amount of stamina. This is why anyone who says to you, "I've always wanted to write a book, but I don't have an idea for one / where to start," they're just kidding themselves. Ideas are easy. Ideas are cheap. Starting is equally as easily. Now, sticking with the project for the next 100,000 words, now that's the real test. But I digress. The folk who stick with it, who do manage to lay down 100,000 words for their first draft, will tell you they did it with stamina, not inspiration. But that's not quite the word we're looking for. When a sports player says stamina, a creator means momentum. Recently, I've been writing 1,000 words each day, every day since this year started, and it gets easier to reach that goal with every passing day. Back in January, when I was fairly rusty, I was writing, I could maybe do 400 words in an hour. It was terrible. But now I can do about 1,000 in 1 hour. So it is getting easier. Why? Because I have momentum. It's a part of my daily routine now. Sure, first taking out my phone in the morning on the train and picking up where I left off yesterday still has a bit of a sting, but that's only because I've lost some momentum since I was writing yesterday. The longer you go without writing, the harder it gets to pick it up again. You forget what you're doing, you lose confidence, and frankly, you feel scared. It's like picking up an old Tamagotchi after neglecting it for months. So, keep writing. Set a daily goal and stick to it. You don't have to contribute your entire goal to one big block of a project. If you genuinely can't find the power to write a full 1,000 words to that one project today, that's fine. So write 500 words instead, and then make up the other 500 words for something else. The point is to write something. Rust can gather on the creative engine very easily, and it can be a pain to shake it off. But if you keep the wheels greased and keep writing, the act of writing itself will get easier and less intrusive with each day. Number 9. Inspiration is not only in the joy. This point is a sister to the idea that inspiration can be found in the small things as well as the big. Because, despite what you may believe, inspiration is not necessarily a happy emotion. No, inspiration is more like, it's more like a butterfly. It's fluttering around and landing indiscriminately on any surface it can. It's really unpredictable. Inspiration can be found in laughter, love, excitement, yes, but it's also found in grief, depression, hatred, even boredom. This shouldn't come as a surprise. Let's be frank here, writers aren't known for being the most happy-go-lucky group on the planet. But inspiration found in the minor keys of life do have as much use as the inspiration found in the major keys, perhaps even more so. Stories need to have conflict, something that drives the protagonist to fight against that negative force and hopefully overcome it. Inspiration derived from a happy experience may not provide fodder for conflict because it's born from the positive aspects of life, whereas inspiration dug from the dark side of life and humanity is going to give you a deeper vein of narrative possibility to mine. This doesn't mean you should wallow in self-pity for the sake of inspiration, but as we all know, life has a habit of throwing unpleasant curveballs at you. They hardly need to be invited. It can be hard in the heat of a moment to turn your frustrations and sadness into something creative, and you don't have to. it has been proven that negative experiences are more likely to linger on the mind than positive ones. So once the moment has passed and you're back home at the end of your difficult day, take to your creative space and convert those bad moments into ideas and concepts for your writing. It's actually quite a therapeutic process, massaging these negative emotions into something useful, and it can end your day from hell on a note of positivity and productivity. And finally, number 10, aim high and aim off target. I think we've made it clear that while inspiration is all well and good for sparking a story into life, it's actually elbow grease, stamina, momentum, shrugging off imperfections that will see your ideas transform into that final product, the book, the movie, the screenplay, the album. But if this all seems like it's all about taking your bright light bulb of inspiration and then smearing the mud of daily life all over it to dull the effect, I've used a lot of metaphors and comparisons to inspiration in this video and the previous one, some of them contradictory, but that's kind of the point really. Inspiration is a nebulous thing, beautiful and rich with possibility, but unprocessed, raw, useless in its original form. You cannot sell or share inspiration to people, but you can sell or share inspired things. Things where the creator has taken their inspiration, mixed it into a paint can, and then pasted it liberally across their creation. So no, this isn't about driving your inspiration into the ground, smothering it with all the structures and techniques of creative writing. No, this is about helping that cloud of inspiration take shape, a real, tangible form. Some people are experts at harnessing their inspiration into a final product that is cohesive, while still letting that initial spark shine through. Others leave their ideas too raw, the potential obvious, but the creator clearly struggling to make something of it. Either that or they're too scared to tweak or touch their perfect vision. Some do indeed bury their ideas under too much scaffolding and structure. But what separates them? What separates the people who miss the mark from those who hit it? Well, many things, but successful people have a clear aim. They know where they'd like to take that idea. It doesn't need to be a complete, detailed roadmap, just a sense of the direction they'd like to take their idea. Without an aim, creators take their ideas like flashlights into the woods, thinking it'll be enough to light the way. But soon they're lost in the wilderness, their project meandering pointlessly. So, after you have your muse, your eureka moment of an idea, before you begin moulding it into the opening chapters, first sketch out where you'd like to take this. Where do you imagine this idea will end up taking you? Don't be afraid to aim high. Lofty and exciting ambitions will keep the flame of motivation alive, and as the old saying goes, aim for the moon. Even if you miss, you land among the stars. You don't have to stick slavishly to your aim. It's okay to bend the project in a different direction if you really feel it's for the best. The purpose of laying down an aim from the outset is partly to know where you're going, and also partly to give you drive. The mere knowledge that there is an end goal to your project, that it's not just destined to wander in circles until it fizzles away to nothing, that can be a big help in ensuring your wonderful, inspired ideas are given the justice they deserve. And that's it. So these are my 10 ideas for finding inspiration and then making the most of it. What about you? Do you have any great tips or advice for seeking out inspiration or harnessing raw ideas onto the page? Let me know in the comments below. And that's it for today's Off the Shelf. Thank you very much for listening, readers. The written version of this is on the blog on my website, the link of which is in the description below, along with links to my social media, my other blogs, along with a link to my Patreon, where I would appreciate your support for my work. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.